So my name is Chan Hui, and I'm very happy to be with you. Today is March 17, 2018, and I am talking to you from my home in Saigon, Vietnam. This is so wonderful to be able to be with you every month, and I am very thankful for all that made it. Um, Thank you. So I am so happy that you are also with us from Denver, and I wish that your mom will be um, very happy wherever she goes. I also want to share with you that I will be back in Montreal in a month from now. So April 15, I will be back in Montreal. Um, Looking forward to be with our Canadian and American Sangha. So today we are continuing on with our study of the 50 verses and the 40 tenets of Plum Village. And before we go there, I would like to share with you I'm not sure if I have already mentioned it in the last talk, but Sister Trân Không was here in Vietnam for 3 weeks for the launch of the movie Walk With Me. It was very, very well attended. We reserved the whole complex of 6 movie theater for the Sangha, and it was sold out. Many Sangha friends couldn't make it and had to go with the public, and that made them sad. But anyway, so the movie was very well received, and I'm not sure if um, in Canada we already have it, but yeah, it did make a good impression here in Vietnam. Um, with Sister Trân Không coming, we discovered many of her old associates, and also many of the small sangha that we didn't know existed. So now many of them has manifested, and it is so wonderful to see. In my encounter with them, I am very happy to be able to share with them how we are organized and practicing together in America and in Canada. And they are very impressed with the model that we are having, that we have developed, and our practice. And it is so wonderful. No, it is. I'm very proud to be able to tell our Vietnamese co-practitioners that the practice that they are currently learning to practice in Vietnam has been practiced in Canada since 1985, which is 33 years ago, and in America, and we have been, and Thai have been polishing, testing, and so we have done all the test run, and now they are really benefiting from beautiful finished product. That said, I will be also very happy when I'm back in America and in Canada to share with you how their practice is different from ours, and how we also, how I am so much learning from my meeting and practicing with them. Um, Here I have the chance to meet and practice with um, monks as old as Thai generation, with many civilian OI of the age of Sister Chung Khong, who were also her brothers and sisters when she was in Vietnam. Um, and we practice also with the very young monastic. It is surprising how so many young people are joining the monastic practice. Um, many young, educated, successful people are just living up everything to join the community of monks and nuns. So it is very encouraging and inspiring. Today, we will be studying together the true mind. So this is the seventh talk of the series of 10 on the 50 verses. And we are now looking at the nature of reality through mind. I am smiling because when I read the title, I could not help but remind or remember my the insight gatha that Thai has given me when I received the lamp. Um, and I don't know, I think that I have shared it with you, but I would like to just repeat it again because the name really did remind me, the theme did remind me of the insight gatha that Thai has given me. Um, so it reads, chân tâm một biểu lộ, once the true mind manifest, pháp giới sẽ quang huy, the Dhamma Dhatu will shine brightly. Tuệ nhật chiếu thực địa, the sun of wisdom will light up the land of reality. Thông dong từng bước đi, you will be walking visibly with each step. So from that time, receiving the lamp in 1994, so that is 24 years ago. So I will celebrate the quarter of century next year. Well, maybe I will not celebrate because there's nothing to be so proud of. I can see how many of my younger brothers and sisters are much happier and much better on this way of practice than I can be. But yes, I have been contemplating as often as I can remember, as I am reminded of that yata of practice that Thai has given. And true mind has always been a question for me. What is true mind? Because it sounds so wonderful. On the Gatha, once it manifests, the Dhamma Dhatu will shine brightly, the sun will light up, blah, 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 and you will walk in peace. I have not been always walking in peace. I have not seen the land of reality nor the sun of wisdom. So maybe I have not been able to understand or to see how the true mind is manifesting yet. So it is such a wonderful pleasure to be with you to look at that at today's theme. I don't see Lily. Escalela? Lily? Okay. No, the reason why I'm mentioning Lily is because she has done such a wonderful work, putting up with the program for this year once again. And yeah, she's really Thai's librarian. Oops. Okay, she's there. So I stopped talking about Lily. Merci Lily pour votre travail d'organisation. Vous nous organisez très bien comme programme et toutes les sanghas vous en sont reconnaissants. Alors donc, pour ce mois-ci, Lily nous a réservé 3 gathas. What was the message? I don't understand. Okay, sorry. So the first gatha that Lily has put up in our pre-readers is the is the verse 39 of the 50 verses of the Yu Biểu Học Manifestation Only School. So verse 39, true mind. Interdependent manifestation has two aspects, deluded mind and true mind. Deluded mind is imaginary construction. True mind is a fulfilled nature. It begins with interdependent manifestation. And the Vietnamese version nhân duyên có hai mặt. So nhân duyên has been translated by interdependent manifestation. But nhân duyên is unless I do not understand interdependent manifestation, but for me, it does not convey the whole meaning of nhân duyên. So nhân duyên has is a whole school by itself, and it is about causality, cause and effect, and conditions for manifestation, interpenetration, interbeing, and all of that, all of the conditions that get together for anything to manifest. So interdependent um, manifestation, if we understand interdependent, that everything is contributing, everything is contributing for anything to manifest, and then interdependent manifestation. Um, so that's how I need to remember and to understand that word. So we talk about true mind, and we talk about deluded mind. So true mind, as I have mentioned earlier, I don't think that I have been able to fully understand it. But deluded mind is our everyday mind. Our everyday mind, as we have learned in the six previous talks, comprising of our alaya, of our manas, of our mind consciousness, and of the five sense consciousnesses. So all those eight consciousnesses together manifesting into our thoughts, into our words, into our actions, manifesting our karma, manifesting our suffering, manifesting our afflictions, our anger, and etc. Um, and that we, so that is, so deluded mind, that mind that we experience, that we see, that we are in our everyday life, that is tainted by our false perception. When we have been uh, looking at the five sense consciousness, and when we have been looking at the mind gardener, we have seen how in our life, in our interaction, uh, when we are receiving stimuli, a signal from our environment, how it is coming into our mind and how it is being transformed, and how our mind has been so skillful or tricky in hiding, in obscuring, in shielding, in reality of things in itself, and give us only images that are influenced by the presence of manas, that seven consciousness that has been there, um, and that has mm, allowed us to see ourselves as a separate self, a separate entity from our environment. So mind manifesting in two ways. Mind manifesting in the deluded way that we know and that we do not like. Mind also manifesting as true mind when we I was to use the word happy. The same conditions, the same place, the same people. One day we feel light and wonderful. Another day we feel less than beautiful. So the Lokadhatu, or the realm of reality, the Dhammadhatu, the land of suchness, um, we do experience it in our practice. And now we are trying to find ways in order to be in that, or to touch, or to stay with that true mind that we know we have been able to touch from time to time. And because deluded mind as well as true mind are conditioned, they are changing depending on the conditions that make them arise. So true mind and deluded mind are just we have been talking about waves on the ocean. So deluded mind manifesting is a wave. True mind manifesting is also a wave. Depending on the conditions, they manifest as true mind, or depending on adverse condition or usual condition, they will arise as deluded mind. But if we see the two mind as wave of the ocean, then we can come back to the eighth consciousness, the alaya, and we can see where they arise from. So deluded mind and true mind are manifestation of star consciousness of alaya, and depending on the conditions, alaya or the mind will manifest in a shape or in another shape. It will manifest as deluded mind, or it will manifest as true mind. And it depends on the conditions that is at the base of its arising or its manifesting. So if we understand that true mind are conditioned, that deluded mind are also conditioned, we know that true mind is possible, and we know that deluded mind is impermanent. When we are caught in discriminative mind, when we are caught in anger, when we are caught in jealousy, when we are caught in all of those unwholesome thoughts and affliction that we know are born or influenced because of the presence of manas, we know that those conditions are what is behind the manifestation of those, and we will know, or we can understand why it is that we have been taught the many practices in order to be able to water our good seed, to be mindful of our speech, to be mindful of our action, so that we can catch those manifestations as soon as they arise. You remember when we were learning the sense consciousness, uh, how the process is starting with the three, the sense organ, the sense object, and the sense consciousness coming together. Those three things coming together, giving rise to an impulse, giving rise to the tact and the contact and the impulse and the etc. So being mindful, practicing mindfulness is practicing that capacity to be able to identify all that process that is happening most of the time automatically within microseconds. When I was doing my reading this afternoon, I je suis tombé sur I I look no. Je suis tombé sur quelque chose de très intéressant. But yeah, in the heart of the in the heart of the Buddha teaching, chapter 27, the 12 links of whatever are very interesting. So I would suggest that you, if you have time, to come back to it and read it. It was not in the pre-readers, but it is very interesting. How the usual Buddhist school would describe the 12 links, starting from ignorance to old age and death. Um, and those 12 links described in that way to explain our existence is based on our deluded mind. And in that chapter of the teaching of the book, Thai has Thai has rewritten or has um, proposed uh, another expression of the 12 links based on the pure mind. And why I was happy to come back to it is because when I first got into this practice and I started learning Buddhism, one of my aunt who is a nun in a Thai Tantra school, and she was also the abbess in one of his temple in America. She went to, she came to my wedding and stayed in our home. And when she knew that I was a Thai student, she said, "You know, I am so impressed by Thai teaching, and especially by well, one of the best teaching that I like from Thầy Nhất Hạnh is how he has translated the 12 links from the deluded mind into the 12 links manifesting from the true mind. I didn't pay any attention to that comment, but it came back to me today. And that is one of Thai's mm, I don't know which word to use. Uh, but Buddhist teachers usually teaches Buddhism from the deluded mind, from the suffering, from the, and Thai is teaching from the other side, and he's teaching from the other side because one of the principal um, particularity or specialty of Thai or inside of Thai is his application of the um, non-dualism. Um, we practice the Four Noble Truth. Thai is now or has always been um, teaching and reminding us to be very careful not to cut ourselves in half, not to cut the world in two, like black and white, uh, because of that non-dualism, because of the insight of non-duality. And when we listen or when we look at Thai's teaching, we can see that very, very clearly if we pay attention. So if somebody now is asking me what makes Thai Nyakhan teaching different, I would say it is non-dualism. Um, Ancient Buddhists would come to this practice because of their suffering. And they come to this practice to learn ways in order to get away from suffering and to get to happiness. And that is the way people usually think. That is also the way that I catch myself thinking too often. And that is the way that we can learn not to not to get caught into if we are to say that we are student of Thich Nhat Hanh. If we are student of Thich Nhat Hanh, we are not practicing in order to get happiness. We are practicing suffering and we are practicing happiness. When we are practicing happiness, we are practicing suffering. When we are practicing suffering, we are practicing happiness. Happiness and suffering are just the two sides of the same coin. And we cannot escape from suffering to get to happiness, or we cannot try to stay with happiness and escape from suffering. That is not possible. Just as true as right goes with left, just as true as light and darkness are together, suffering and happiness are the same. And it is only from suffering that happiness can be. And it is only because we suffer that we can be happy. Phew. So that has been one of my insight during my winter time in Vietnam. But it is becoming um, clearer for me. Um, when Thai say there's no way to happiness, happiness is the way. Um, it is only in suffering that you can find happiness. Or like in the movie, there is a sentence that struck me very strongly. Um, If you have not seen suffering, you have not seen anything. Um, yeah. So non-duality, no mud, no lotus. There's no way to happiness. Happiness is the way, etc. Are Thai's teaching, and as student of Thai's teaching, we need to learn and to remember and to practice that non-duality, not trying to get to some place to get something. It is right here, right now, right under our feet, right in our on our cushion when we are sitting. And I take this opportunity also to give you a challenge. But when you are coming to my retreat, when you are coming to our retreat in Montreal or in Greensboro, and if you cannot find that non-duality, please let me know. Because if you cannot see and if you cannot find, or if we have not been offering that, it means that we have been off track and that we have not been able to transmit Thai's teaching. So that's my challenge to you. And do it in such a way that when friends come to our session, when friends come to our sitting meditation, when friends come to our day of mindfulness or to our retreat, uh, that they see very clearly um, that the happiness is in the suffering, and that the suffering is the very food to their happiness, and only because they have been suffering, and they can be entitled to be happy. So that is the one seal of Thai teaching. The other one that I also think that I can qualify as Thai um, signature is the word interbeing and the concept of interbeing. Um, Interbeing in the sense of the avatamsaka word. Anything contain everything else. Every teaching of the Buddha contain all of the teaching. Any teaching of Thich Nhat Hanh contain all of the teaching. So the interbeing nature of all that is also another signature of Thai, and that is the name of our order, and we are practicing in the order of interbeing, and it is a Thai signature also. So when we are studying the Noble Eightfold Path, when we are studying the Four Noble Truths, when we are studying the seven factors of enlightenment, etc., we need to see also that each of those teachings contain all of the other teachings. And we can also see not only the interbeing nature, but we can see also the non-dualistic principle that is behind all of the teaching. 11:26. Okay. So talking about suffering and talking about happiness, Lily has also uh, taken two of the 40 tenets for us to study this month, and one of them is number 15. So 15, 1, 5. The awareness of suffering helps us recognize existing conditions of happiness. So how do we see that? The awareness of suffering helps us recognize the existing conditions of happiness. When I read that, I remember, and yeah, it's unfortunate that our friend from the Boise, Idaho Beginners Mind Sangha are not with us. But they will listen to the recording, and they will be very happy to know that I am quoting them. So the Beginner's Mind Sangha has been the first Sangha in America I have been teaching after land transmission. And I was young then. Um, but in one of the retreat that I was teaching in Idaho, they uh, they still remember, and they still remember and remind me of some of the what they call the good thoughts and insight that I have shared with them. Uh, but in those days, in the beginnings, uh, we used to have in Idaho a retreat in a beautiful resort. It's a hunting resort, high in the mountain, with many luxurious cabins. You know how those rich American, when they go into the high mountain and they set up their hunting resort or hunting. It's very luxurious. And because I was invited as teacher, they would give me the best equipped cabin. But somehow that night, the fire, I don't know how to lit a fire, and the cabin got very cold, and I did not have enough clothing, so I was really freezing all night. I was so happy when every woke up in the morning for the morning meditation, and I could join them in the Zendo, where it was warmer than that icy cold cabin. But I did experience suffering caused by cold weather. I think somebody just joined in that you need to mute Brother Carr. Um, but I remember that I suffered very much because of the cold, and I was imagining how the homeless people in Montreal could feel during those winter nights when so I was there breathing and being really in touch with that distress and that suffering. So that day I gave a Dharma talk on suffering because of cold weather and the happiness of being able to be in a warm zendo giving a talk to my friend. That was 20 years ago, and the friends in Idaho still remember that talk. And they say that was one of your best talk. So this tenet um, reminded me of that, and it makes so much sense. Without the awareness of suffering caused by cold weather when you don't have heater or when you don't have enough clothing makes you appreciate so much um, the warmth of a comfortable home. And Thai also remind his young monks in Plum Village. In the early days of Plum Village, in the 80s, when we went there and we stayed in Low Hamlet, there were no heater. There were only a wood stove. And before we went to sleep, we would have what they call bouillot. So it's like a caoutchouc bag, and you put hot water in it, and you close it, and you put it in your sleeping bag. So it would last about 2, 3, 4 hours. But in the morning, when you wake up, that bouillot has become a cube of ice. And so that was how Plum Village was in the early days. Now the monks are staying in rooms, and it is uh, heated with well, modern heat. Uh, and Thai sometime teaching to his young monk had to remind them, do you know how it was in Plum Village in the early days? How happy we you can be because you do not have to suffer, blah 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 blah. So aware of suffering make us better appreciate and recognize the conditions of happiness that we do have. And we have many conditions for happiness. But if we forget suffering, then we will not be able to see all of those conditions of happiness that are present. And that is what tenet 15 is reminding us of. Um, the awareness of suffering, the awareness help us recognize all of the conditions of happiness that we currently have around us. And that is why in the 14 mindfulness trainings, we have the fourth mindfulness training of the 14. And my friend in Montreal have been reciting the 14 mindfulness training again this month, this morning. Thank you. I will be doing that tomorrow with the Vietnamese Sangha here. But the fourth mindfulness training is awareness of suffering. And because Thai know that we need to stay in touch with suffering in order to be happy, in order to stay happy. Because if we forget suffering, we cannot be happy. In our practice, as I have mentioned earlier in today's talk, we came to this practice because we suffer. We suffer because we have been lonely, because we have been isolated, because blah blah. We each come with our source of suffering. And we find a beautiful Zendo. We find a smiling OI inviting the bell. And I can see him on my screen now, Gilles. And he's so beautiful, the bell, smiling and inviting the beautiful sound of the bell. And yeah, and we are so happy to have found the MPC Montreal. So it is not very difficult when we are suffering, when we suffer, to find happiness, to find a way out of suffering and to touch the happiness. That's not difficult. The difficulty and the challenge is to keep that happiness and to nourish that happiness so that it can grow further. Um, so that is another challenge that I would like to propose to you. How can you keep that happiness when you first find the Sangha alive? How can you nourish it? And how can you make it stronger? When you met me, I think that you like me, and that's why you are still here. What can I do to keep you there? Nothing that I can do unless you do it. So, how can you keep that interest? How can you keep that happiness alive? The happiness of us being together 1 hour, only one short hour a month together, um, sharing our presence, sharing our support to one another, sharing our collective insight and our collective practice together. Um, from Vietnam to Greensboro to Omaha to Montreal to Denver. Yeah. What does it take? How can we maintain it? How can we keep it alive? I see that my time is almost over, and we also have another wonderful um, tenet, tenet 25. Happiness and suffering inter-are. So we have spoken about that. Affliction and enlightenment are both of an organic nature. Affliction and enlightenment, deluded mind and pure mind, are all conditioned, are all of organic nature. What is it that we want to nourish? What is it that we want to make manifest? We practice the four diligence. We practice mindfulness in order to be able to see what is going on in the present moment inside of us and around us. We are stable, we are strong, we are present. We walk peacefully, we breathe mindfully, we practice understanding and love. We are nourishing the true mind, and the true mind is manifesting understanding and love. Um, so that was a little bit off, off in the sense that I am stepping into next month theme. Um, so what do we want to remember from all of our study? Mind is the chief architect. Mind is the master painter. Mind is what defines the world we are in. Mind is that common ground. Mind is that big ocean from which everything is manifesting. I am a manifestation of my mind. Brother Carl is a manifestation of my mind because if Brother Carl is not in my mind, I will not be able to see Brother Carl and I would not be able to call Carl Carl or to recognize Carl as Carl. And last month, Patrice, who is not here today, have asked a very good question. And the question that Patrice asked, why do you say that we are manifesting from the same mind? And the answer that I gave was, if I say that I am manifesting from my mind, and as I see you, you are also, because I see you, you are also manifesting from my mind. And if we believe the same thing, if you believe the same thing, and if you practice the same thing, you can say exactly the same thing as I am saying. So Patrice can say, Patrice is manifesting from Patrice's mind, and Chen Hui is also manifesting from Chen Hui's mind. So Chen Hui mind and Patrice's mind is the same. And in Chen Hui mind and in Patrice's mind and in our common mind or in our collective mind, the whole universe is there. So Mount Fuji is also there. And when I saw that Sister Kanako has just joined us from Japan, I'm very happy to tell her that Mount Fuji is a manifestation of my mind. And I am in Vietnam, and Mount Fuji is in Japan. And Kanako is also in Japan, and she is also a manifestation of my mind, as I am a manifestation of my mind. So when we are practicing understanding, we are practicing love, we are practicing peace. And when Thai say that peace in oneself, peace in the world, that's what he means. Because we are part of the whole. We are a part of the Buddha of the future. And with our practice, we are influencing the whole universe. And it is so wonderful. So thank you, my dear friends, my dear fellow practitioners. It has been such a wonderful time again. And I am very happy.